Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, Kane's independent media production. Today, we are pulling the curtain back on the music product industry and explaining to you how they convince you to buy things that maybe you don't actually need. To get out ahead of this a little bit, we're not saying don't buy equipment. We're not saying don't get new things to then be inspired by it to be creative. This is more about how the industry creates a lot of static and misinformation and incentives that don't really matter in order to get us to buy something that they want to sell us, rather than things that we could actually use to further our creativity. We're not here to name names or call anybody out, frankly, because every major brand in the industry utilizes these tactics. It's part of getting your product out there and getting people to buy it from you. But what do we do when we're so mired in so much stuff that's not solving a problem for us and not adding to our playing that we feel deficient if we don't have? What we're really talking about here is the process of a sale. Someone has a product, there's a customer, they're going to sell that product to that customer. Now, to convince someone to buy that product, employing emotion is the most powerful thing you can do. Because when people become emotional, they step away from making really rational decisions that are based on evidence and experience, and instead get excited and end up spending their money where if they'd taken a minute and thought about it, perhaps they would have thought again. This is the fast track to what we call buyer's remorse, which is to say you got the exciting boost from getting the new thing, maybe you showed it to your friends, maybe you posted a photo of it, but at the end of the day, you didn't actually really need it, and it's not actually adding anything to what you do the rest of the time, and suddenly the whole thing is soured for you, and you might not even want to use it at that point because you're starting to realize that it wasn't an informed decision, it was an emotional decision. Now, for me personally, I have done a lot of fear-based purchasing in the past in my career because I thought there was a piece of gear that I needed to have, or else people were going to think I wasn't authentic or adequate or a professional or, any number of adjectives. This is such a money pit to get into, and it's probably the number one emotion-based purchasing experience that I've had and also a lot of my friends have had. This is also a great way to get into a cycle of buying things, being disappointed, selling them to buy other things, being disappointed, and going round and round and round and round, rather than taking time to identify what you actually want so that you can get deeper into that instrument, that music, whatever it might be. In a future episode, we're going to give you a little bit of not a buyer's guide, but a buyer's methodology more for how to select gear, how to find the things you need, and how to solve any problems you might have with your setup. But for today, we're going to focus primarily on the tactics that are coming at us and muddying the waters when we're trying to make those decisions. We're going to divide this into three main emotional states that get us into the position of buying something that we don't necessarily need. They are fear-based buying, aspirational-based buying, and essentially needing to have the newest thing, keeping up with the whoever's. These are the three that we have fallen into here personally, and that we see an awful lot, especially in forums when people are discussing purchases that they've made. First up, talking about fear, straight up, like we were talking about earlier, the idea that you need to have this thing or else you are inadequate. There's something wrong with you. You're not a professional. You're not right for the gig. It could mean you buying another drum set because of the style, or buying another ride cymbal because you're afraid that the one you have is too loud or not loud enough. When at the end of the day, most of these decisions are things that only another drummer who is watching maybe way too closely would even notice. Particularly with things like drum sets and cymbals too, it's an extraordinary amount of money. So if we're getting into that cycle of ever the changing gear, it's a lot of time, it's a lot of money spent, it's a lot of mental space. We don't need it. Aspiration. This means someone looks at your stuff You look super high end because your gear is super high end. You feel super high end because your gear is super high end. You want people to look at you and feel like they are aspiring to the things that you have, the place that you are occupying. This is some serious social media stuff for sure. Looking at beautiful instruments, looking at beautiful people, all of that. But at the end of the day, it's still just a drum set. No matter how pretty it is, they're still just cymbals. And if our number one concern is people looking up to us because of the stuff that we have, it's worth reassessing your priorities. The really spooky thing about this one is that it goes both ways. You could be the person looking at an influencer or a professional or a rock star and thinking that you need to have what they have for whatever reason, whether to sound like them, to look like them, to just feel connected to what they do. This is still a purchase that doesn't really have anything to do with making music or being a working musician or being creative. It's purely tactile, visual, and if you're going that direction, maybe really, really expensive. Now, maybe the trickiest one of all is this idea of a competitive aspect, of a needing to have the newest thing for some reason. This is really curious in this day and age because there's such a movement toward vintage gear and people wanting to have this real authenticity around their look, their sound, their feel, and to be taken seriously based on this. This has brought us a lot of companies that are either giving us the most space age kit, or they're giving us something that looks like it was made at the turn of the century and was made with machines from the turn of the century, all in furtherance of giving us a feeling that we are on the cutting edge. When, again, at the end of the day, they're drums. How you tune them and how you hit them is 90% of the battle. And there's a lot of time lost thinking about whether or not we need to have a different kit to be taken seriously, if we need to have the very newest lug design or the very newest bass drum pedal design, when, that's the reason that most of our favorite players didn't have any of that stuff, and we're still trying to just play, maybe play like them. This kind of thinking can also lead us into having a wealth of possibilities that become so broad that we can't even make an informed decision, like the difference between two triple flanged hoop thicknesses or something like that, or maybe an innovation in bass drum pedals that looks and maybe is super innovative but doesn't actually change our approach to the drum at all. It's just the newest way to tweak how you use your gear. And once we get into this, the diminishing returns, they start right away because it's still a drum with heads and hoops on it. And these little changes like zinc die cast versus aluminum die cast versus, whatever, they're not really changing anything from the ground up. It's just another thing that we can buy and then feel like we are ahead of the game. A term that comes up here a lot is the concept of a value proposition. And what this means is someone presenting you with something and telling you why it's valuable. These features get these benefits. And where this starts to get muddy is whether or not we need the benefit that these features are giving us. Is it really changing the game? Is it really completely altering our approach? Or is it just a different looking lug that gives us a feeling when we look at the drum, but ultimately doesn't change the behavior of the instrument at all? In some of these cases, a direct A-B comparison may elicit no difference. It may elicit a slight difference, but the bigger question is that difference, does it matter? Is it enough to change how you play? Does it influence some part of your creativity? Or were you actually doing fine before this new product made you feel deficient in this way? This brings us to the ultimate buzzword for all of this, and it is innovation. Now, innovation doesn't mean new. It means that you're improving upon something. You are making something better in a tangible way where the old thing is less good, the new thing is more good, and you're going to want to move toward the better of the two options. Taking every new thing that anybody thinks of and putting it under the umbrella of innovative, again, completely muddies the waters in terms of us understanding how to make a choice if we're trying to improve something that maybe is genuinely frustrating us. This means that you can spend a ton of money on things that are not going to improve an issue that you maybe are having, and then at the same time you're getting overwhelmed with products and people and companies telling you that something else about your rig is somehow not good enough and that you need to solve a problem that you weren't even aware you had, because ultimately it's not actually a problem. This means that we're actually talking about the idea of a solution in search of a problem rather than a problem that needs a solution. And this is a complete, a fundamental waste of everybody's time, because if you're telling someone they have a problem because you came up with a solution, worst case scenario, they're going to decide that they do have a problem that they didn't have before, and then they're going to buy that thing from you. They're going to show it to all their friends, and you're going to have a product that's solving for a problem that didn't exist in the first place. It only became a problem when someone thought up a way to solve for it. The other side of this is, oh, I've been playing single-ply drum heads and I'm breaking them a lot. I should move toward two-ply drum heads because they're more durable. Simple. I had a problem, a solution exists, I move toward the solution. Two-ply drum heads would be considered an innovation as far as I'm concerned, because they solve for a problem that people had. We would also be remiss if we didn't mention one of those lovely elephants in the room, this idea of premium, bespoke, handmade products, as if that nomenclature makes them more valuable. Scarcity is a facet of economics in every corner of everything that there is in markets in the whole world. And if you go in saying, we're only going to make 300 pairs of these shoes, or we're only going to make 50 of these drum keys, history tells us that that makes them more desirable, it makes them more valuable, it makes them something that people will want to keep around, show off, and elevate themselves, maybe make themselves seem aspirational to someone. If you have two of the same thing and you make one of them more expensive and don't change anything at all, people will think that the more expensive one is inherently more valuable because you're saying it is. And this is true in every part of our culture, every part of our entire market-based system. And we got to keep an eye on this, because if we're all running around with $50 drum keys, something's gone off the rails. We could go on and on about this all day. Both of us here, Ben and myself, have been really excited to touch on this because some of you may or may not know, this is the kind of thing that Ben deals with every day as a marketing strategist. This is exactly how we learn to be a part of a system that can benefit us. And even for someone on the other side, like he finds himself, he's thinking about the consumer. He's thinking about how to help them make an informed decision, which an awful lot of companies and builders and inventors aren't. They're just trying to sell a product. And at the end of the day, a lot of these products do have a right home. And we want them to get to the people that actually need them, rather than just peppering everybody with these ideas like they need to be buying all this stuff all the time. Now that we're creeping up to the holidays, keep an eye out for an episode following up after this one that's going to be talking about how to make informed decisions as we go into the holidays, with all the sales that are going to be coming and all the opportunities to upgrade our gear and make different adjustments to the way that we play. There's going to be a lot to talk about there, because there is a lot of cool stuff coming out, and we're not saying don't buy new things, just want to make sure that we can think our way through and do it effectively. And thanks so much. Please like, comment, subscribe, and follow the link below to the Patreon. It's the best way to help us continue to do this. Tons of extra content over there. Symbol series still going strong. And we would love to know, we would love to know, particularly buying experiences, whether they were super great or super terrible, ones that stand out for you in some significant way in the past, because talking about this today, we've definitely thought of some good ones and some super bad ones that we've had.